شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا. Welcome to all of the students to these new classes starting today bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, which will be a weekly class in which we'll study the books of the scholars, starting from تعظيم al-Ilm, which is on the etiquettes of seeking knowledge, the etiquettes, the adab and manners of a student of knowledge, and then going over to عوائق الطلب, which is another kitab talking about things that are obstacles in the way of the student of knowledge and things that can prevent them from attaining beneficial knowledge. And then we'll carry on from there onwards, inshallah, with usul al-thalatha, and then qawaid al-arba'a, and then usul al-sitta, and then whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits. So these classes will be, as I said, on a weekly basis, and they'll be, or the students are expected to be diligent, to revise, and to act according to the etiquettes that we're going to study bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. There'll also be tests after every book or after every chapter of every book for those students who wish to take exams or those students who wish to take the tests. So it's not mandatory upon every single student, it's only for those who wish to take the test. And taking tests for every chapter or every book that you study is something which is extremely beneficial. It is practiced in many places in the Muslim world, and more so in institutes like colleges, kulliyat, universities and so on. And the knowledge that a student is examined on, that student will revise a lot more. And that prevents a student from attending classes for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then after this long period of time of attending classes, they find out that they in reality haven't benefited much and their knowledge is only general knowledge. So in order to avoid that, inshallah, we're going to have tests on separate days bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And as I said, it's only for those students who wish to sit these exams. And we'll be studying various different sciences, inshallah, varying from aqidah, fiqh, usul al-fiqh, al-qawaid al-fiqhiyah, hadith, mustalah hadith, and so on. That's with regards to the lessons. With regards to knowledge in general, firstly, there's the fact that you're all sitting here and the majority of you are probably under the age of 25. It shows that there's a lot of goodness and a lot of khair in this ummah. For as long as the shabab of this ummah are seeking knowledge and they're learning about the religion of Islam and they're going to spread that religion or that knowledge that they've learned, that is a sign that the ummah is in goodness. Especially more so in the UK. And the reason why the Muslims, or outside the Muslim world, the United Kingdom is probably the best place to practice your religion and the best place to learn your religion. And the reason is not because of the locality of the UK, lakin because in the UK, walillahi alhamdu wal minna, there are many mashayikh and students from Ahlul Sunnah spreading the khair and teaching people about Qala Allah wa Qala Rasul. As for knowledge, my dear brothers and sisters, it is enough virtue that Allah Jalla wa Ala said, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah Jalla wa Ala elevates the believers in ranks, And amongst those believers, he elevates Ahlul Ilm, those people who Allah Jalla wa Ala has granted knowledge. Allah Jalla wa Ala said to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or with regards to that last verse, it shows that the scholars and the students of knowledge are above the rest of the believers. So because the student of knowledge and the alim is above the other believers, because he has attained two things. He has believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the common folk have also believed in Allah Jalla wa Ala. Lakin this student of knowledge and this alim has attained an extra virtue, which is that they are ulama, or they are students of knowledge. They know the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why Allah elevates them above the regular believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ أي لا يستوون. Are they equal? Those who know and those who do not know. Allah Jalla wa Ala commanded the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said to him, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Allah Jalla wa Ala commanded the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to increase him in knowledge. If you look into the Quran and the Sunnah, you won't see Allah Jalla wa Ala commanding the Messenger to increase him in wealth, to increase him in status. Lakin Allah Jalla wa Ala commands the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to increase him in knowledge. And the person who has knowledge will never wish to exchange it for anything else. The person who has knowledge would not exchange it for the world and everything that is in it. Like in the person that has been given, has been made a leader or a ruler, they would wish to attain the knowledge that the ulama have attained. And that's why we shall see in the book that Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, who was from the leaders of the Khulafa or the Abbasiyin, they said to him, is there anything that you wish for after you've attained everything? Because he was the Khalifa of the Muslims. Not the ruler, the Khalifa al-Am of the Muslims. And then he said, as we shall see, I only desire, the only thing that's left for me is to be sitting next to students or above students and saying, حدثنا حدثنا حدثنا. So even after being a king, a Khalifa, he wished and he desired and he yearned to be amongst the ulama. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din." Whomsoever Allah Jalla wa Ala wants good for, then Allah Jalla wa Ala gives him understanding of the religion. If Allah Jalla wa Ala wants goodness for a person, He makes him a student of knowledge. He makes him a person who seeks knowledge of Islam. And by that, this person will be from those who Allah wants goodness for. And the opposite to that is, or the mafhum mukhalafa, the opposite to that is, if Allah Jalla wa Ala doesn't want good for a person, then He doesn't give him understanding of the religion of Islam. So the fact that you're here and you're attending classes, not just in this class, like you're attending classes wherever you may be, or you're listening to this class, it shows that Allah Jalla wa Ala wants good for you. It shows that Allah Jalla wa Ala wants good for you. As young brothers and sisters, there are millions of other places you could have been. The youngsters your age are all in shisha clubs. They're all in restaurants. Even if they're not doing haram, they're doing things that are mubah, that are permissible. Lakin out of all of them, Allah Jalla wa Ala has chosen you to attend a class in which inshallah you will hear Allah said and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said. So that in of itself is a ni'mah that you need to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. Also the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilma, sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever takes a path to seek knowledge, it doesn't mean he gets to the end of the path, because you can't get to the end of seeking knowledge. Lakin, for as long as you take the path to seeking knowledge, then you are on a path to seeking Jannah. So when you left your homes this afternoon and you were traveling to the Masjid, you are on a path to seek knowledge, which in return makes it the fact that you'll be on a path to seeking the reward of Allah Jalla wa Ala, which is none other than Jannah. And how is knowledge a sabil or a path to Jannah? Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created ins and jinn except that they worship me. So we've been created for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you cannot worship Allah Jalla wa Ala unless you have knowledge. Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge is impossible. You may say La ilaha illallah, and you may do those things that are from the nawaqid of La ilaha illallah, that nullify La ilaha illallah. A person may say La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, and they may make sujood to the graves, and they may ask dua to the dead. So a person can say La ilaha illallah and fall into the opposite of La ilaha illallah. Also, Allah Jalla wa Ala commands us to pray. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Bunya al-Islam ala khams." Islam has been built upon 5. After the shahadatain, the salah. If a person doesn't know how to pray, if a person doesn't know how to make wudu, then they won't be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, zakah. If a person has wealth and they need to pay zakah, if they don't know how to pay zakah, then they'd be falling into a sin. So this knowledge is not something that we seek just out of entertainment, just to entertain us, or just to be labeled students of knowledge. We learn or we seek knowledge in order to live. As we shall see, Imam Mohammed said, the people are in more need of knowledge than food and drink. Because food and drink, you only need it maybe once or twice a day. Lakin with knowledge, you need it at every given moment. You need to know how to remember Allah Jalla wa Ala. You need to know how to pray towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. So all of these evidences show the virtues of seeking knowledge. Now, seeking knowledge is not something we do to get a job. In secular studies, we find that a person goes to college, then goes to university, and then what? Goes into the workforce. And then they start their career from that point onwards. Or they go into an apprenticeship and they learn their trade. Like with Islamic knowledge, it's not like that. Islamic knowledge, the very first thing that you do or that you seek knowledge for is to be able to live. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "مثل الذي يذكر ربه والذي لا يذكر ربه كمثل الحي والميت." The one or the example of the one that remembers Allah Jalla wa Ala and the one that doesn't remember Allah Jalla wa Ala is the example of the dead and the person that is dead and the one that is alive. Therefore, we seek knowledge in order to live, in order to get by. Knowledge, when it's mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah, the only knowledge that is being referred to is knowledge of the Quran of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The virtues of knowledge are many, and inshallah many of you have heard more Al-Hadeeth and more verses than that which I have mentioned now. The first book that we'll be starting off with is a book called تعظيم al-Ilm, which is authored by an alim by the name of Shaykh Salih al-Usaymi hafidhahullah ta'ala, who resides in Riyadh and is from Saudi Arabia, and he travels extensively within Saudi Arabia, hafidhahullah ta'ala, and the surrounding countries. He has authored this book in order for the students of knowledge to know how to seek knowledge. And the reason why it's important on why seek knowledge or how to seek knowledge is important, or you must know how to seek knowledge, is because if you don't know how to seek knowledge, you'll be going from class to class, picking up random books and not knowing what to study, when to study, and how to study. And the scholars of Islam, they've written many books on the etiquettes of the student of knowledge, how he should act, what he should read, at what level he should read what book, and so on. And Shaykh Salih al-Usaymi hafidhahullah, he only mentions 20 points. This is a summarization of a book that he has, which is تعظيم العلم, the glorification of knowledge. Like in this khulasa is only a summarization of it. It is only a summarization of it. And the reason why we're studying this book before going on to the other books is so that we can know how to take notes. It's so that we know how to act with our books. It's so that we know after the class how we act before the class, during the class, the etiquettes of before class and after class and during the class, how we should conduct ourselves, how we should deal with those people that are around us, from our peers, our colleagues, those people who are our family, and so on. So this book is a comprehensive book which the student of knowledge should take heed of and understand. طيب تفضل شيخ.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم اغفر لشيخنا واحفظه ولوالديه ومشايخه والناس أجمعين. قال الشيخ صالح بن عبد الله بن حمد العصيمي في كتابه خلاصة تعظيم العلم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله المعظم بالتوحيد، وصلى الله وسلم على عبده ورسوله محمد المخصوص بأجل المزيد، وعلى آله وصحبه أولي الفضل والرأي السديد. أما بعد، فهذه من كتاب تعظيم العلم خلاصة اللفظ، أعدت بالتقاطها لمقصد الحفظ، فاستخرج منه للمنفعة المذكورة اللباب، وجعل فيه الأنموذج من كل باب، ليكون في نفوس طلبة شمس النهار، ويترشحوا بعده إلى العمل والادكار. فأسأل الله لي ولهم لزوم معاقد التعظيم والفوز بجوامع فضله العظيم.
طيب, this is the muqaddimah to his book. So he's telling us, the Shaykh hafidhahullah ta'ala, after praising Allah Jalla wa Ala and sending peace and salutations upon the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that this book that we're about to read now is a summarization of the book that he has authored, which is تعظيم العلم, glorifying knowledge. And he says the reason why he has summarized this, because that is a long book, the reason why he has summarized it is so that it can be memorized and so that the student of knowledge can benefit from it more. And he also mentions that he only mentions one example or a few examples for every single foundation or every single principles, so that it can be clear to the students of knowledge and so that they can prepare to follow these and benefit from them. And then he makes dua for the student of knowledge and for those who are taking benefit or listening to these ma'aqid. Reading the muqaddimah, just as a side point, every time or anytime you want to read a book from the books of the scholars, it's important to read the muqaddimah. It's important to read the muqaddimah. So don't ever buy a book and just read the middle. It's important to read the muqaddimah, the introduction, before anything else. Because in this introduction, the author, rahimahullah or hafidhahullah, the author will mention why he authored this book and the objective behind this book, why he has authored it, and what topic he's going to be talking about. And also, there may be terminologies that are used within the book that he explains in the muqaddimah. مثلا بلوغ المرام, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah, when mentioning those who narrated the hadith or who reported the hadith, sometimes he will say أخرجه السبعة, narrated by the seven. Sometimes he will say أخرجه الخمسة, narrated by five. Or sometimes he will say أخرجه الأربعة, the four have mentioned it or reported it, being reported by the four. If you don't know what sab'a or khamsa or four are, then you're not going to know exactly who is he referring to. You may think he's referring to 7 companions or 4 companions. Like in reality, he's referring to Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Musnad of Imam Ahmed, Sunan Abi Dawud, and so on. So it's important to read the muqaddimah. طيب.
قال المصنف: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه عدد من تعلم وعلم. أما بعد، فإن حظ العبد من العلم موقوف على حظ قلبه من تعظيمه وإجلاله، فمن امتلأ قلبه بتعظيم العلم وإجلاله صلح أن يكون محلا له، وبقدر نقصان هيبة العلم في القلب ينقص حظ العبد منه حتى يكون من القلوب قلب ليس فيه شيء من العلم.
طيب. The Shaykh rahimahullah, after praising Allah Jalla wa Ala and sending peace and salutations upon the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his introduction, the second introduction to the book, he mentions that verily the nasib or the amount of knowledge that this servant or that a servant will attain with regards to knowledge, the amount of knowledge that a person will attain depends on how much he glorifies this knowledge, how much he honors it, and how much he respects it. So if a person, he says rahimahullah, hafidhahullah, if his heart is full of glorification of knowledge and the honoring of knowledge, then knowledge will find a place in his heart. Knowledge will find a place in his heart. Lakin if a person doesn't glorify knowledge and he doesn't adorn himself with the etiquettes of knowledge, then this heart of this individual will not attain much knowledge. So the amount of knowledge that you attain depends on the amount of the honor that you have for knowledge. For example, مثلا, the book that we read, or any book, if you throw the book onto your table, or you come into the house and you throw it on the side by the shoe rack, that is a sign that that person hasn't honored and glorified the knowledge that Allah Jalla wa Ala has sent down. And we shall see some of the narrations when it comes to even honoring the books and honoring the scholars. So mathalan, if a person mocks a alim from the scholars of the Sunnah, then that shows they have they are not glorifying the knowledge that Allah Jalla wa Ala has bestowed upon this alim. Because more often than not, they will degrade or demean this alim because of who? Because of the knowledge that he is carrying. To the extent that Shaykh says, حَتَّى يَكُونَ مِنَ الْقُلُوبِ قَلْبٌ لَيْسَ فِيهِ شَيْءٌ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. To the extent that because a person belittles knowledge won't find a place in his heart. So he'll attend classes and he'll attend different sessions and so on, and enroll onto different courses, like he hasn't benefited from knowledge. And all of that goes back to the love and the honor that a person has for knowledge.
أحسن الله عليكم. قال المصنف: فمن عظم العلم لاحت أنواره عليه ووفدت رسل فنونه إليه، ولم يكن لهمته غاية إلا تلقيه، ولا لنفسه لذة إلا الفكر فيه، وكأن أبا محمد الدارمي الحافظ رحمه الله لمح هذا المعنى فختم كتاب العلم من سننه المسمى بالمسند الجامع بباب في إعظام العلم.
طيب. So the Shaykh says rahimahullah ta'ala, the one who glorifies knowledge, then the light of knowledge will be apparent in him. Then the light of knowledge will be apparent from him. And a student of knowledge obviously doesn't act like the common folk. The student of knowledge and the alim, he has a hayba, he has a status amongst the community, and it won't be different. It has to be different to how street people and common folk would be. Like in the only time that this knowledge becomes apparent from his outward appearance is if he glorifies it, and if he yearns for knowledge, and his only worry is how to attain knowledge. So if he gets 10 minutes of free time, he wants to read the book of Allah Jalla wa Ala, or the Al-Hadeeth of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or he wants to read one of the books of the scholars. If he's going on a long journey, he always carries a book with him. He always carries a book with him, or she always carries a book with her. So that shows that this person has a love for knowledge. And when they go into a bookshop, you see them wanting to buy different books, even if they do not have the finances for it. Like they love knowledge so much that it becomes their everything. And the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, it is as if Mohammed, rahimahullah, Adarmi al-Hafidh, as if he noticed that the glorification of knowledge, or the amount of knowledge that a person attains, depends on how this person loves and attains knowledge. That's why in his Musnad al-Jami', and in the book of the Sunnah that we compiles the Hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ended the book with a chapter saying, Babun fi i'zam al-ilm, the chapter of glorifying knowledge. It's as if he is saying, everything that has preceded in this book, all of the ahadith that I have compiled, if you do not glorify knowledge, and you do not honor it, and you do not love it, then none of these ahadith will benefit you, whether you memorize them or whether you don't memorize them. طيب.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال المصنف
حفظه الله
وأعون شيء على الوصول إلى إعظام العلم وإجلاله معرفة معاقد تعظيمه، وهي الأصول الجامعة المحققة لعظمة العلم في القلب، فمن أخذ بها كان معظما للعلم مجلا له، ومن ضيعها فلنفسه أضاع ولهواه أطاع، فلا يلومن إن فتر عنه إلا نفسه، يداك أوكت وفوك نفخ، ومن لم يكرم العلم لا يكرمه العلم.
طيب. So the Shaykh ends the Muqaddimah by saying that the best way to attain knowledge and the best way to glorify knowledge and honor knowledge is by taking the path to knowledge. And seeking knowledge has a way, it has a path, it has a methodology. And the Salaf rahimatullahi alayhim, they've authored books in how to attain knowledge and the etiquettes of the student of knowledge. So the Shaykh says, by implementing these 20 points that the Shaykh will mention, then a person will be able to attain beneficial knowledge. And he is the one who has loved and glorified and honored and given knowledge its correct right. Lakin, if a person doesn't give heed to these points, and he doesn't learn the methodology of the scholars in seeking knowledge, and he just wishes to go from place to place, take knowledge from podcasts and even nowadays memes and so on, then that person won't attain knowledge. By listening to 5-6 minute clips, a person won't attain knowledge. Yes, it will be a reminder, and I'm not putting these reminders down, because reminders, وَذَكِرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, Allah Jalla wa Ala says, and remind, for very reminding benefits the believers. Like when it comes to attaining knowledge, there's a way, there's a sabil, there's a methodology of seeking knowledge. And if a person belittles this, then you will find that many years will go past and you find that they haven't even studied any books on mathalan certain sciences. And that has happened, where people for 10 years or so, 15 years, they are, mashallah, practicing Muslims. Every single lecture that is in every single or every single conference, in every single city he attends, in the winter and in the summer, and lessons from time to time. He may even attend a lot of classes. Lakin because he doesn't know how to seek knowledge, then this person finds out that after 15 years they can't read the Fatiha properly. And this is a musibah. This is a great fitna. Or after 10 years you find that in reality they haven't even studied Usul al-Thalatha. Or even if they studied Usul al-Thalatha, they haven't understood the maqsood and the objective of Usul al-Thalatha. Although you find them studying great books like Al-Aqidah Tahawiyya and so on. So mathalan, just because a book exists, it doesn't mean that you study it at that particular time. Knowledge has levels and stages. Mathalan, Allah, if I was to say to you, we're going to study Al-Aqidah Tahawiyya, a book that many of you have heard of. If I said we're going to study it now, I'd be cheating you. I'd be oppressing you. You may not benefit from it. And even if you do benefit from it, then the benefit will be little. Lakin, if we follow the methodology of the scholars, and we start from the smaller books, and once we study these smaller books, we are tested in them, and we will memorize whatever we can memorize, and we understand the meaning of every line, and the objective of the book, and the objective of the author, then you will find after you've studied 3 or 4 or 5 books, that now even the wording that you're using changes. because you're learning the foundations of knowledge. You're learning principles to the extent that you're able to give a fatwa, although you shouldn't. Like, you're able to give a fatwa. And you know that when this alim gives a fatwa, you know exactly where he's coming from. And you know what he's referring to. Like, that will only happen when you learn the foundations of knowledge. If you learn the foundations of knowledge, you will be able to attain many forms of knowledge. Mathalan, for example, the science of al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya, maxims of fiqh. If you learn these principles, you will be able to combine a lot of knowledge in one principle. For some of these principles can be applied or are applied in every single chapter of the religion. Mathalan, the principle of al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak. Certainty is not removed by doubt. This principle can be applied in the book of Tahara, the book of purification. It can be applied in the book of Salah. It can be applied in the book of Zakah, Hajj, Siyam, Talaq, Nikah, Buyu', transactions, buying, selling. It can be applied in all of these chapters, although it's one principle. So if you learn these principles, you're able to reach that knowledge which is far and beyond. And that's why many of you, mathalan, if you go onto YouTube and you listen to Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah, or any other alim being asked different questions, these questions that they're being asked, do you think they prepared for them? Obviously not. Do you think they've heard them before? Sometimes no. Like, why are they able to answer them? With all confidence, why are they able to answer them? Because they know the principles of the Sharia. And they know the foundations that they need to take it back to. They know what is evidence in the Sharia of Allah. They know that the Quran of Allah, the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Ijma' of the companions, and also Qiyas, they know that these are Hujjah. They know they are proof. So, mathalan, if you're talking to someone and you say to him, what is the proof that this is permissible? If they say to you, a Shaykh Fulan said, you say, listen, this is not an evidence. With all due respect to Shaykh Fulan, the Shaykh, lakin I asked you for evidence. Now, once you know what evidence is, that it is the Quran and the Sunnah and the Ijma' of the Salaf, Qiyas and so on, you won't accept anything less from him. And you will also know that every alim's statement has to be put forward to the Quran and the Sunnah. And that the criterion is the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's why you find a lot of students, or I won't call them students, a lot of people, every time there's a fitna, they get confused. Who should we follow? If two scholars have a dispute, an issue between them, they're confused. Who are we going to follow? Who are we not going to follow? The person that doesn't follow this person, that's alim, is he a mubtadi'? Is he a sunni? Is he a salafi? Is he a hizbi? They get confused. Why? Because they have no foundations. Although they claim to have usul, like they have no usul. Because if they had usul and foundations, they wouldn't be confused. Do you ever see Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan getting confused when two scholars have a dispute? La, of course not. Lakin you find that ta'assub, or blind following, and hooliganism when it comes to knowledge in the field of da'wah, you will find that if a person is far away from seeking knowledge in a way which is mu'assal, in a way which is based upon foundations, you will find that one day you're his brother, and one day you're a mubtadi', you're a hizbi. One day you're the best of the creation, the next day you're the biggest mubtadi', and you're worse than Iblis. And that's what causes, or the lack of knowledge is what causes brothers to boycott one another. A brother who's sitting next to you in the lesson today, and he seeks knowledge, or a sister that is sitting next to you in the class, and their outward appearance is mashallah upon the sunnah, and they're here to learn. if you test him with what's your stance on Shaykh Fulan, what's your stance on Shaykh Fulan, and so on, and you haven't written a bayan and so on, you may end up boycotting them. And that happens all the time. I'm not talking about something that goes on in a far off land or on a far off land. No, it goes on within our communities where people that love one another, that once upon a time loved one another, they end up boycotting one another. In the name of what? Islam. In the name of what? Salafiyah. And I'm sure many of you have issues where people say to you, don't listen to this individual and don't go to this individual because he hasn't made tabdi' of this individual and he takes knowledge from this individual. I'm sure many of you have heard this sort of nonsense. Now what causes this? Ignorance. Ibn Qayyim said, Al-da'u jahlun qatilun, or al-jahlu da'un qatilun, wa shifa'uhu amran fi at-tarkib. Ignorance is a disease that kills. And its cure is a alim from the Sunnah and evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah. So that is also one of the benefits of seeking knowledge, which is that it prevents you, it keeps you away from fitan. It keeps you away from fitan. It's a shield for you against different types of fitan. طيب.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال المصنف حفظه الله: المعقد الأول تطهير وعاء العلم وهو القلب، وبحسب طهارة القلب يدخله العلم، وإذا ازدادت طهارته ازدادت قابليته للعلم. فمن أراد حيازة العلم فليزين باطنه ويطهر قلبه من نجاسته، فالعلم جوهر لطيف لا يصلح إلا للقلب النظيف. وطهارة القلب ترجع إلى أصلين عظيمين: أحدهما طهارته من نجاسة الشبهات، والآخر طهارته من نجاسة الشهوات. وإذا كنت تستحي من نظر مخلوق مثلك إلى وسخ ثوبك، فاستحي من نظر الله إلى قلبك، وفيه إحن وبلايا وذنوب وخطايا. ففي صحيح مسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم وأموالكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. ومن طهر قلبه فيه العلم حل، ومن لم يرفع منه نجاسته ودعه العلم وارتحل. قال سهل بن عبد الله رحمه الله: حرام على قلب أن يدخله النور وفيه شيء مما يكرهه الله.
طيب. The first ma'qid and the first foundation that the Shaykh wants to teach us is تطهير وعاء العلم, purifying the vessel of knowledge. When we seek knowledge, when we memorize knowledge, when we want to attain understanding of al-Islam, where does this happen? It happens in the heart. It happens in the heart. And the more or the cleaner your heart is, the more knowledge that you can attain. The more knowledge that you can attain. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله. Verily, in the body there is a morsel of flesh, there's a part of the body that if it is rectified and pure, then the rest of the actions of the believer will be rectified. And if it is corrupt, then the rest of the actions of this individual will be corrupt and not sound. So the heart is the very first thing that a person needs to purify if they wish to attain knowledge. Why? Because the Shaykh says, فَالْعِلْمُ جَوْهَرٌ لَطِيفٌ لَا يَصْلُحُ إِلَّا لِلْقَلْبِ النَّظِيفِ. Why? Because knowledge is a delicate jewel. It is a gem. It is something which is precious. And it is not befitting that it goes into the heart that is not clean and pure. And how can we purify our body? Our hearts. The Shaykh says, وَطَهَارَةُ الْقَلْبِ تَرْجَعُ إِلَىٰ أَصْلَيْنَ عَظِيمَيْنِ. It goes back to two things. There are two ways that a person can purify his or her heart. أَحَدُهُمَا طَهَارَتُهُ مِنْ نَجَاسَةِ الشُّبُهَاتِ. Cleaning it and purifying it from the filth and the dirt of the shubuhat, the doubts. And shubuhat are those things that are doubts that are thrown at you with regards to your religion. Whether they are doubts of shirk, whether they are doubts of bid'ah, whether they are doubts of ilhad and so on, all of these doubts and shubuhat, they harm your body. So if you distance yourself from shubuhat and doubts and so on, then knowledge will find a place in your heart. And how do you do that? By sticking to the sunnah. And by learning from the people of the sunnah, studying with the people of the sunnah, and staying away from the people of bid'ah and the people of kufr. That is how a person can attain knowledge. وَالْآخَرُ طَهَارَتُهُ مِنْ نَجَاسَةِ شَهَوَاتِ. The second is purifying your heart from desires that lead to haram. The shahawat that cause a person to fall into sin. These are things that disfigure the heart. They make the heart dark to the extent that a person will not be able to differentiate between goodness and evil. Where the person may be falling into sin and they have no feeling towards it. Like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, when the believer falls into a sin, it's like there's a mountain that's getting ready to fall upon him and crush him. Why? Because even though the servant the mu'min falls into a sin, he knows that he has disobeyed Allah Jalla wa Ala. So it's something which is great to him. And he will rush towards tawbah, repenting. And lakin, he says rahimahullah radiallahu anhu, lakin the munafiq and the non-believer, when he falls into a sin, it's like a fly that's going past his nose. It's nothing. It is nothing. He has fallen into sin, so what? And he doesn't see it as a bad thing. So test yourself. If you commit a sin, if you feel guilty, that is a sign of iman. And if you feel nothing, then that is something that you should be worried about. That's why Shaykh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di rahimahullah, in combining these two, he says in his Manzuma al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya, when obviously in the muqaddimah, in the introduction, he says, اعلم هديت أن أفضل المنن علم يزيل الشك عنك والدرن ويكشف الحق لذي القلوب ويوصل العبد إلى المطلوب. He says rahimahullah, know, may you be guided by Allah Jalla wa Ala, the best ni'mah, the best of the bounties of Allah Jalla wa Ala is علم يزيل الشك عنك والدرن. Knowledge ويكشف الحق لذي القلوب. Knowledge is that which removes doubts and shubuhat. That is what beneficial knowledge is. ويكشف الحق لذي القلوب. And the beneficial knowledge is that knowledge which makes clear the haqq, the truth, for this heart. That is the beneficial knowledge that the Shaykh says. Also it is ويوصل العبد إلى المطلوب. It is the knowledge that helps a person attain that which he is seeking. Like a person will not be able to do that until they purify their heart. So the Shaykh says وإذا كنت تستحي من نظر مخلوق مثلك. If you're shy of seeing, or if you're shy of someone seeing you fall into a sin, then how about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then you need to be shy of Allah Jalla wa Ala seeing you and knowing that all of these fitan and ihan and balaya, dhunub and sins are within your heart. And then the Shaykh says that, mentions the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, which he says that verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at your outward appearance and your wealth. ولكن ينظر ماذا؟ ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. لكن الله تعالى, لكن Allah will look at your hearts and your actions. لكن Allah Jalla wa Ala will look into your actions and your heart and your heart and your actions. And the actions are only a repercussion of what is in the heart. So if you see a person doing good and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they are meant to, then know that this heart is clean, it is sound. Like if a person is committing sins, then know that his heart, or he is committing sins and he doesn't repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because every son of Adam sins. Like if a person is continuous in this, then know that his heart is full of disease. His heart is full of disease to the extent that he doesn't see. Like if you see a person sinning and you say to him, ittaqillah fi Allah, don't do this, and he says, Iman ha huna, then he is lying. If he says, my heart is clean, he's lying. Because if his heart was clean, then he wouldn't be committing these sins. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he complained to his Shaykh, Waqi' ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu wa rahmatullahi alayhi. And he said to him, he asked him about, he said, his memory and so on, with regards to seeking knowledge. And then Imam Shafi'i says, Shakawtu ila Waqi'in su'a hifdhi. I complained to Imam Waqi' due to my bad memory. That's Imam Shafi'i. فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِي. And he guided me towards, and he advised me to leave off sins. وَقَالَ, and he said to me, اعلم بأن العلم نور. No, the ilm, knowledge, is light. وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُهْدَى لِعَاصِي. And the light of Allah is not given to a sinner. So he advised the Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah to leave off sins. Why? Because knowledge, this knowledge that you wish to memorize and understand and implement, it is light. And the light of Allah Jalla wa Ala will not go into a heart which is impure. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, مَنْ ظَهَرَ قَلْبَهُ فِيهِ الْعِلْمُ حَلَّهُ. Whoever purifies his heart, then knowledge will settle in his heart. And anyone who doesn't concentrate on it and doesn't wish to remove the dirt of shubuhat and shahawat from his heart, then knowledge will leave him. And then he closed off by mentioning another narration in which Sahl ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu, he said, rahimahullah, haramun ala qalbin, it is haram for a heart, an yadkhulahu, that nur, that light enters it, wa fihi shaw mimma yakrahu Allah. It is haram for knowledge to enter into a heart that has things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. A heart which has things that Allah Jalla wa Ala dislikes. If a person has that, then it is impossible, the Shaykh says, for knowledge to enter. تفضل.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال المصنف حفظه الله: المعقد الثاني إخلاص النية فيه. إن إخلاص العمل أساس قبولها وسلم وصولها. قال تعالى: وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء. وفي الصحيحين عن عمر رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: الأعمال بالنية ولكل امرئ ما نوى وما سبق من سبق ولا وصل من وصل من السلف الصالحين إلا بالإخلاص لله رب العالمين. قال أبو بكر المروذي رحمه الله: سمعت رجلا يقول لأبي عبد الله، يعني أحمد بن حنبل، وذكر له الصدق والإخلاص، فقال أبو عبد الله: بهذا ارتفع القوم.
طيب. The second ma'qad, or the second foundation, the second principle for seeking knowledge, or the second etiquette, is ikhlasu niyyati lillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having sincerity in seeking knowledge. Having sincerity in seeking knowledge. Why? Because ilm is ibadah. Al-ilm, knowledge, seeking knowledge, is a form of ibadah. And every single ibadah has two conditions. If a person wishes to pray, or they wish to pay zakah, or fast, or hajj, or any type of ibadah, it has to meet two conditions. What are these two conditions? Excellent. It has to be according to the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first one, al-ikhlas lillahi ta'ala. Write that down. If a person wishes to do an ibadah, there are two conditions that a person has to meet. The first is that it has to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if a person doesn't do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they can fall into shirk, major or minor. And the second condition is that it has to be in accordance with the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if it is not in accordance to the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it can lead to al-bid'ah, innovations. And this is the meaning of, or these conditions, you can use la ilaha illallah as evidence for it. Because La ilaha illallah, la ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. Meaning every time you do it, ibadah, you do it for Allah Jalla wa Ala. Wa anna Muhammadun Rasulullah, and Muhammad is his servant, his messenger, final slave and messenger. Then you're doing ibadah in accordance to the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Since he is the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's the one that conveys the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us. So this condition of ikhlas is not only wajib, obligatory in knowledge, like in every type of ibadah. So the Shaykh says rahimahullah ta'ala that ikhlas is the foundation of all acts. It's the foundation for all acts to be accepted. And then he mentions the verse وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ, that they will not command it except that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mukhlisina, and their hal and their situation is they are sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are far away from worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he also mentions the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Every action is according to its intention, or the reward is according to the intention of a person. That's why sometimes you may see two people praying next to one another. They're praying the same salah in the same masjid next to one another, lakin one is being rewarded 700 times fold, and the other may actually be sinning. They're praying the same salah in the same masjid and they're praying next to one another, lakin one is being rewarded beyond knowing and the other is sinning. Why? Because one is praying lillah, he's praying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he has khushu' in his salah, humility and so on, and the other is praying so he can be praised, or he's praying because his friend just pulled him into the masjid and he has no intention of praying. He may not even have wudu, like in his intention, every one of them or each one of them is being rewarded according to his intention. And seeking knowledge is one of the greatest acts that a person can do. The scholars mention that knowledge is of two types. There's knowledge which is wajib, and there's knowledge which is sunnah, fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. Knowledge which is wajib upon every single Muslim. Knowledge which is fardu ayn. It is wajib upon every single Muslim. And knowledge which is fardu kifaya, it is wajib upon a certain part of the ummah. Mathalan, La ilaha illallah, Tawheed. It's wajib upon every single individual. You can't say he said La ilaha illallah for me, or my father said La ilaha illallah on my behalf. Nor can you say my brother has prayed on my behalf, so I'm not going to pray today. Nor can you pay anyone to do so. Therefore, that is wajib, aini. So because it is wajib upon you as an individual, then learning how to practice it and how to do it and implement it is wajib upon you as well. Wajib upon you as an individual. Then there's knowledge which is sunnah, which is not wajib upon you. Mathalan, the knowledge of inheritance. If you don't know how to inherit people, or how to do inheritance and calculate inheritance, you're not sinning. If you don't know how to do janazah and so on upon the Muslims, or if you don't know how to pray, then the salatul janazah, then you as an individual are not sinning. Like in the whole community, the responsibility is upon the whole community. So knowledge of the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on is wajib upon every individual. That's why it's important that a person does it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, the Shaykh says, وَمَا سَبَقَ مَنْ سَبَقَ وَلَا وَصَلَ مَنْ وَصَلَ مِنَ السَّلَفِ الصَّالِحِينَ إِلَّا بِالْإِخْلَاصِ. And those people from the Salaf, the reason why they reached where they were is because of, or they reached the levels that they reached is because of the ikhlas, the sincerity that they had. The sincerity that they had to Allah Jalla wa Ala. That's why the companions, we love all of the companions. Lakin Abu Bakr is the best of these companions. Why? Because of the iman and the ikhlas and the love that he had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We'll end on that note inshallah, and we'll carry on from there next week bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We've got about 5 minutes and we'll leave that for questions if there are any. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam wa ahkam wa billahi tawfiq.